Hey! Ah. And there was vocals. So just a little preamble before we start officially, just to say you'll notice that we are quite officer-like this evening. I was kept fully informed of the problems, and it's been my decision to carry on with the meeting because we've got excellent officer representation as it is, and it seemed inappropriate to cancel it right at the last minute because I think we can make progress, so I'll start the meeting. First of all, apologies, and there's none received here, but I think you're saying that since then we've had David Willingham, Councillor Willingham, Councillor Took, and is that it? That's it? Marvellous, okay. Any declarations of interest from my left? No? Excellent. Minutes of the last meeting. Are you happy that I sign these as a correct record? Okay, so I will do just that. Can I just ask one quick question? Actually, with David not here, it's quite difficult. Do you know if he managed to sort out the safeguarding issue that he was concerned about with either Claire or Victoria? No? Okay, well, can we somehow keep track of that? Or maybe you have it as a brief agenda item for next meeting? Otherwise, I'll pass these over to you. There's a signed copy. Right. Okay, I better read the script, haven't I? I've got Welcome to the Cheltenham Borough Council Audit, Compliance and Governance Committee, being held today, Wednesday, the 9th of July. My name's Councillor Adrian Bamford and I'm the chair of the committee. The meeting is being recorded by the council for live broadcast on its YouTube channel. If there are any breaks in transmission to the YouTube stream, the meeting will be adjourned for a short period until the issues are resolved. Okay, first three items done. And number 4, public and member questions. I don't think there are any, are there? No. Good. So we move on to the internal audit report. Lucy, do you want to introduce the kind of the first two aspects rather than the exempt one, the data report and the other one? Okay, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, members. This is your usual report. It gives you an update of the work that the internal audit team have conducted and completed since the last meeting of this committee. You've got 3 final reports in your pack tonight. There's a data maturity audit. There is our disaster recovery audit, where we looked at the revenues and benefits services and the controls that ICT have in place in case of an emergency. And you also have an update to the voids process. So we undertook a follow-up of an audit we'd undertaken previously. And you can see in there that initially there were 8 agreed actions and 5 of those have been completed. So good progress is being made in voids. We also continue to follow up all agreed actions, which is on your page 29. There are a few outstanding, but nothing that I'm concerned about, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, well, let's address these one by one, shall we? Can we do it in reverse order? Do you want to talk about the voids? I don't know who's best to talk about that. You mentioned that there are a number of actions almost all complete.
Yeah, I'm happy to give an overview and then take any member questions at the end. Just to introduce myself, my name's Matt Ward. I'm Head of Housing Services. Previous experience with voids is from the letting side of the process, but obviously due to challenges that we've been facing, I've been helping out since June with regards to the number of voids that we got in the minute, and obviously trying to minimise rent loss and, more importantly, give homes out to tenants that are on our our waiting list. So as the report kind of indicates, we had experienced quite a few challenges, predominantly around procurement, about previously how under CBH contracts had been procured or not procured, where we were paying contractors over threshold amounts over periods of time within a year, which under procurement rules means that you should actually procure a contract out. So we've been working very hard behind the scenes. Just to give you an idea operationally, at the minute we've got 125 housing revenue account void properties. Those are kind of split into two categories, which is known as a major void. So those are properties that need various components such as kitchens, bathrooms, plastering, decoration, heating, installations, etc. So they're your kind of big ticket items. We have at the moment, because the number changes from week to week, we've got 77 major voids at the moment. As at the end of last week, 33 of those are with contractors. So as the procurement report, as the audit report indicates, what we have done is we've now procured 3 contractors who we can essentially pass major voids on to. So the reason why we've allocated 33 is basically to get the contractors to prove themselves effectively, and whoever performs best, we will then give them a higher number of properties to deal with. So we are on the cusp of one of the contractors seems to be doing particularly well, giving us dates. They're hitting those dates. The work seems to be of a good quality. So I've spoken to their general manager. They were able to take an additional 30 properties off us. So in theory, if we look at the major voids, over 60 of the 77 will be with a contractor. There's various works within them. I'd expect between 8 to 10 weeks. So by Christmas, by the close of this year, we should have those back. So that's major voids. Minor voids, these are in theory voids that need minor works. But having spent the last month or so going out and looking at these properties, I'd say that the word minor, I take that term very loosely because a lot of them have asbestos floor tiles. They've got to be removed properly. You've then got to latex the floors. You've then got to do your minor void works. The property then needs a clean at the end of it. So even a minor void, quite often you're looking at, a number of works that have to be scheduled in. We are fully resourced now in the voids team. We've also had new colleagues, so new void inspectors join because former colleagues had left. So we're now at kind of full kilter in terms of resource. We meet every Friday where we are pushing for 10 properties, 10 minor voids to be completed the following week. In the past 2 weeks, we've had 20 minor void properties back. This week, I've been out again today looking at the 10 we've had diarised for this week, and it's looking good that we'll get another 10 back this week. So 30 minor voids in the last 3 weeks. Finally getting to the stage, having gone through all the procurement that we think we've got a contractor we can trust to now give a substantive amount of the major voids back to. I've got 25 properties with my lettings team, so it still remains a void until the property's let, but they'll be done either by the end of this week or the end of next week. So I feel personally we've turned a massive corner with it. There's been a lot of hard work behind the scenes to get us to the position we're at today, where we're finally seeing good progress. The other thing we just need to remember with voids is we're not dealing with a static number. So we have about 20 terminations every month where tenancies end, either people move on. So we've got 20, so we've had already, as at, I think it was about the 3rd week in September, I counted, we'd had an additional 118 properties back in as well. So we've dealt with all these as well as trying to reduce the numbers as well. So we have turned a big corner. As I said, it's not just about the rent loss. It's also about, obviously, we've got a lot of people waiting for homes. We've had 100% satisfaction at sign-up stage with the condition of the property, which I'm really pleased about, because it could be very tempting to cut corners, to turn stuff around quick, but it's still about giving that good quality of home out to a new tenant of ours. I would look at with the forecasts. Again, we have to be careful because sometimes, for example, we've got new build sites at the minute. So we've got I think it's called Regency Village, I think it is, in by Sainsbury's off the Tewkesbury Road. Brilliant to have new homes. So we signed up 10 new properties a couple of weeks ago. So 10 new builds complete, moved 10 new customers in. 8 of those customers were from our existing stock. So they're on Home Seeker Plus, they're top of the list, probably overcrowded in properties. So whilst it's great we're giving them a new home, that's brilliant. We then create 8 voids that we've got to detail and programme in. So we're getting these new builds in batches of 10. So there is a bit of short term. We're getting a few more voids, but for a good reason, because we've got new homes coming to fruition as well. So it's a lot of hard work by the team as well. So all the voids team that are out working day to day in these properties as well. I've spoken to colleagues today, because when you work in a voids team, you're kind of in an empty property, you're painting it or putting a new kitchen unit in, etc. And it was interesting to have a conversation because they don't see what happens afterwards. So I said, would you like to know, without naming names, but that a young family's moved in and they're really happy with the property, just to help give a bit of purpose to what we're doing in-house as well. We've changed the way we work a little bit as well. Each operative will have their own properties to work on. They'll stay at that property from start to finish, so that they take ownership of it. It's easier for me to manage productivity as well and keep track of what's coming back. So I think in the past you do a bit of work, then move on to another one. So it's now you stay in a prop until it ends. Because we're being more accurate with when we're getting properties back, it means my lettings team can start advertising them earlier, and we can start doing viewings so that as soon as we finish the void works, if that's on a Friday, we've already got someone signed up to move in on the Monday effectively. So that again helps with the void rent loss. Other little things that we've developed as well, just in terms of the quality of our end product. We're looking at using aqua boards in showers. So those are solid panels, because at the minute, if you tile a bathroom, firstly, if it's in a top floor flat, you've got to carry all your tiles up. Probably takes a day and a half to tile it. You've then got to grout it all. And obviously tiles over the years with the grout, they can go a bit discoloured. So we're looking at aqua boards. They're a lot lighter, easier to install, give a better finish to it. In terms of kitchens, again, instead of tiles, we're looking at splashbacks, like a white marble effect, so it's easier to clean and maintain, and that I think look better as well. Minor little things, moving away from magnolia colours and going into off-white colours and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been a very steep learning curve, but I truly believe we're getting there. I would hope if we continue with the trajectory we're on, by the end of January, we'll have got voids down to an acceptable level. You inevitably, as I said, with your tenancy turnovers, you will always have a certain amount of voids. So sorry if that was too much, but there's been a lot going on in the last few months, but it's starting to look much more positive.
Thanks, Matt. That's really helpful. Sort of operational oversight of the voids process, which I must say I wasn't aware of, so that's very useful. And well done for completing 5 of Lucy's requirements, and also making progress against the other 3. Just to check, the management policy, clearly you've got something drafted. We've got a date of the end of November, end of September for the completion of that. Yeah. What would be a better date to have in there?
We've got the void health policy, is already, we've done tenant consultation with it as well. So that's going to our housing committee.
Oh, sorry.
That's going to our housing committee on the 28th of November. So in there's a set of aspirational performance targets we want as well. So we've got things like the average number of days for a minor void turnaround, the number of days for a major void turnaround. We've also revamped our lettable standard as well to have a look at that as well. But there's still work to do in the longer term, but having a good policy there. We're also meeting on Friday this week to go through our process mapping. So the voids policy will introduce some new stages, because the quicker you can go out to a property, the quicker you can identify what works need doing. Does it need an asbestos survey? Asbestos has been a big challenge. The first contractor that we had in place was taking about 3 months to do an asbestos survey. So you can't do any works until you've had that survey done. We've had to end that contract, go into a new contract, and we're getting a quicker turnaround now. So when we get notification of termination of a property, it's 28 days. So if we can get in there within that 28 days, we can start establishing and programming in what needs to do at an early stage rather than waiting for the outgoing tenant to move out. So it's got operational changes like that in there as well.
So it sounds from what you're saying really that you'd hope that would be embedded by the end of the year. Would that be a sensible timescale for that policy being approved and embedded?
Yes, Chair. Yeah, it'll be agreed in November. I would envisage it will start after.
So can we knock that
after Christmas
timescale back to other two agreed actions as well? Okie dokie. Again, there's progress with those two, so we don't need to go any further. So I'll open it up for members for questions. Councillor Day.
Thank you, and thanks for the operational insight. I think what it brings home to me is there's a huge amount of activity happening. It's quite dispersed around because there are properties around the town. So for me, I think the procedures and controls over it are really, really important for both those reasons. And the sooner, the outstanding actions can be closed, the better, for sure. I have two questions. So on page 27 of our pack, which is the observations and next steps for voids, it says we can report the work is still ongoing to address the control failures and findings identified in our original audit and others which have come to light since this work began. And I just want to check whether the list of failures that we've got in the report is complete and includes those others which have come to light since the work began. So that's one. And then the second one is just to explain. So we've got these failures or open actions, but on the progress summary table, on the progress summary table, but on the action tracker on page 29, we've only got one action outstanding for CBH, which relates to Donovan Court. So these items aren't on your tracker, and I just wondered why. No, there's one CBH. Oh, so they're included in the other column. That's the confirmation I'm after. So on page 29, there's the swap open agreed actions. There's one item outstanding for Cheltenham Borough Homes, which is related to Donovan Court. So I just wondered where in that table the void process items are.
I think they're under CBH, but Lucy.
No, the voids are shown as CBC.
Right.
There's one item you brought forward with CBH, but CBH was shown as a separate partner on our audit management software. We still need to keep that action under review. The void ones are in the list, so they are. So the table you've got with the graphs are for CBH and CBC, so that's combined. So the outstanding number on that table is the number of the list that you've got on the next page, I hope, or it was when I pulled the report together.
Yeah, it was the reference in the report to other control failures that have come to light since the work began. I just want to make sure those other failures are in this report.
I'm going to take that away and I would check that with Jana tomorrow, but I'll put an email out to the committee if that's okay with you. Thank you.
So can we move now back to the previous one, the disaster recovery for Revs and Bends? This looks fairly non-controversial. I think I'm just going to ask members if they've got any questions on it. So we'll move back to the rather more substantive part of it.
One thing I didn't quite understand, there was a reference to senior IT officers advised the longer recovery times compared to last year's recovery test is due to the systems being approximately 4 times larger. And I didn't quite understand what that meant. When they say the systems, does that mean we've got 4 times more systems, or those systems are handling 4 times more activity, or they've got 4 times more data? And how would that apply to the shortfall in the disaster recovery? Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Duncan. And I'm now going to move back to the first item of Lucy's report, which is what's it entitled? Data maturity. That's it. Now, do you want to introduce this specifically, and perhaps indicating why it's an advisory report rather than a normal report and that sort of thing?
I can do, Chair. This was a piece of work that Claire Hughes asked for. I'm not sure what her title is, but the governance officer, looking at the CBC's data maturity appetite. And there's a framework that we followed, and we scored that. So this was to support the work that Claire was doing going forward, which is why it's an advisory piece of work rather than an assurance piece of work, because it's something that's in progress at Cheltenham Borough Council. So what's attached to, which you don't have in your report, which might be worth me sending out, is the attachment where we've got the framework and we've assessed it for CBC to work on going forward, because there's a matrix of 1 to 5. So what you want to be 5 across the board, don't you? And at the moment, Cheltenham isn't, so it's stuff for Cheltenham Borough Council to work towards. We normally just bring the first page of the report, but perhaps I could have attached that, which would have given you a bit more information. But again, I could attach that to my email with the responses to the previous questions, if that would help.
Yes.
Okay, I can do that.
I was having a conversation with Duncan before the meeting, and I know he's got some expertise in this area and got a number of questions, so I'm going to hand over to him now. I think hopefully Lucy's initial comments have helped to some extent, but I know your comments will be rather broader.
Yeah, so my background is actually, in my previous life, I was the data owner for the customer data sets for one of the major government agencies. And we had about 23 million titles and all sorts. So this is my specialist subject in a way. I have experienced the sort of things I've seen in the report. And we certainly found that there needed to be a macro document. So, for example, that document would say, what is our vision for data? What is our risk appetite? What accessibility are we hoping to achieve at a point in the future? Do we have a design authority, which means that nobody can go and procure anything without agreeing with the data standards that have been set by the executive committee or whatever it is? And is there a change control process in place so that people can't go and suddenly open up their data in ways that we wouldn't want them to do? So that would be the first one. The second one would be about the data architecture. We would expect to see a schematic of the different solutions that we had and some understanding of the different kind of data sets that were in them, the type of term of the licensing around that, because, for example, one of the oft problems is getting your data out when you move from one system to another. I'm sure you've experienced it. They use that as a way of trying to stop you getting off their thing. So there are things about it that you don't. Another thing would be, for example, that your legal team would often look at the company providing the data at the point the procurement is made, and then how often does that company's terms and conditions, has it changed, whatever, and have they seen it, and all that. So all that kind of stuff. Another one would be about capability and accountability. So do we have a data owner for each of the data sets? Have we defined what skill sets and knowledge they need to have? Have they got it? Are they signing an annual assurance plan to say they've done a BCP, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And then lastly, have we got that as a understandable and comprehensible risk management process that then feeds back in? So that's not exhaustive, but it's the kind of stuff. And then, of course, the auditors can go away with that in mind and ask the questions. And then the thing that comes back here to, are we comfortable that this is right, wrong, okay or not, is in an edible form. Otherwise, I could foresee an awful lot of work and the same sort of things happening where people are, commentaries about, well, the director concerned didn't actually agree, and this, that, and the other. Well, that's because there isn't a definition of what it is. Do you know what I mean? And, we've got a BCP, but we haven't actually done anything with it. Well, that's because nobody signed an assurance document to say, have you done it? And who are the data owners? And do you know what I mean? So I feel without that kind of a document, I feel a great deal of sympathy for the auditors trying to present that back in any way which this committee could reasonably understand. I don't know how that's not a criticism, obviously. I'm not trying to be critical.
Okay.
The attachment to this report in the first place, and then perhaps if you and I want to catch up maybe with Claire as well, we can have a chat about it, and we'll probably do another piece of work around this at some point. So perhaps I can tap into your experience and. Yeah, perfect. Brilliant. Thank you.
No, so that was extremely useful. It was because it's a bit of not an area that I have any expertise, and I'm speaking for everybody else here. It feels as if the organisation has got quite a lot of work to do before it can be properly audited. Is that?
That's my point.
Yeah.
To the best. For the benefit of the people concerned, it's so much easier if they know what the corporate standards are about what they're expecting to be doing with things. And if that isn't there, that's quite difficult for the different people.
So obviously Claire or Victoria aren't here to kind of, I'm going to say defend themselves, it's not quite like that, but to explain where they feel they are at this point in time. But I think from the work you've done, you clearly feel there's more that needs to be done before you can move this forward into a proper audit from which we can then see the actions that are required and get that into the normal audit cycle. So that it would sound like an excellent approach if Claire or Victoria could liaise with both of you. Could you instigate that, Lucy, with and I think we ought to use Duncan's expertise. Okay, that's brilliant. Has anybody else got anything they'd like to say about this item? Brilliant. Okay, thanks. Best of luck minuting that. Judith? One thing I should say at this point, I do apologise for not bringing our annual report here first. That my intention had been to bring it to this committee first. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out that way. But I would also like to reflect back on the fact that a tremendous amount of work was done by officers, and particularly sitting to my left here, pulling the whole thing together and putting it in a decent format. I think Judy did a brilliant job, personally. Well, I hope you like the annual report. So, let's move on to Emma's item. Would you like to introduce this to us, Emma?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is an update from us as you would get halfway through the the year. So what I've done is slightly change the format. So your first committee, you will continue to get a full report on all of the previous year's activities, all the outcomes, what we've delivered, results, etc. But the second report that I provide to audit committees through across the partnership will be more focused on risk. So, and then we can talk about some of our bigger projects, so some of the proactive work we do, the corporate projects, etc. So rather than giving you an update that potentially I'm going to repeat because we're going to get a full report at the beginning of the financial year, then it made more sense to break this up. So with that in mind, this first report regarding the risk areas of last year, we took the opportunity to bring a load of documents, refresh all the strategies, etc. So that's what this is. And then we'll also talk about, as I say, what our high risk areas are that we worked on, what we've done to mitigate those, and things that we're doing. With that in mind, Mark, who works in the team for me, has done lots of work in this area and worked on the documents. So I thought it might be beneficial for him to present the documents to you and talk them through. So I shall hand over to Mark.
Can we kind of do it one by one, as it were?
Yes.
So just on the general point, you've probably seen our work plan. Does that fit in with what Judith has got up for our work plan, do you think?
Yes, so from me, it won't change. You will still get 2 reports a year. The first report in, which is usually April for Cheltenham, will be all about the previous year's activities, results, cases, etc. This one that comes in September, October time will be about risk, but both are just update reports from the counter fraud unit. If I have reports by exception because I've got policies or whatever, I fit them in around your work plan.
Fab. That sounds. Judith's nodding, so that's
Yes,
good news.
yeah.
So just before I hand over to you, sorry to steal your thunder here. Just on the report itself. So this is our interaction with the portfolio leads on the 3.11 on page 36. I'm trying to work out what's the audit committee role and what's presumably when portfolio lead, are we talking about P?
So this is around the second appendix. So this is about the compliance. So we had committed to, which Mark will talk you through, but we'd committed to completing that checklist because it's like a best practice checklist. What does the Local Government Association say we should be doing from a counter fraud perspective? We committed to completing that when we brought you the risk strategy in 22. So we've now done that. And it's pretty good. I was really pleased when we went through it. We're compliant in lots of different areas. Where we're not necessarily compliant is having interaction directly with councillors outside of audit committees. Clearly, I come to auditing, compliance and governance here, and I go to audit committees across the partnership. But the wider councillor group, cabinets, exec committee, etc., that isn't necessarily happening. And whilst we don't necessarily have a direct portfolio holder, because in my view, fraud is a risk in absolutely everything, and all members should be thinking about it regarding any of the activities that we undertake. So it could be community focused regarding threats, scams, how we best advise residents. It could be if you're in charge of grant schemes or you're dealing with community, it could be that. So I don't particularly want to tether the responsibility of that to one particular cabinet member. And as you say, I absolutely have, if I'm bringing policies, then it could be Peter, it could be Rowena, it depends. And you get the full reports from us as a committee. But what we've suggested across each of the councils is that when an audit committee report is completed, that is then brought to an informal meeting of cabinet, so that they understand our activities, where we're focusing on, things that might come up in work streams, and then they can share that. So that at least there's a bit more of a general awareness going on, rather than making it just one person. And clearly, I can use common sense. If we had a particular issue in a particular area and we wanted to liaise in that particular portfolio, we absolutely would. But this is more about generally thinking about fraud risk in our activities and what we do. So that's the plan. Yes, so it will probably be me, because then I can talk about the work plan, areas of delivery, things that we found, our results from the previous year, high risk areas, etc. So yeah, I'll just roll that into their programme when they've got a bit of space. Poor Mark. He's on tenterhooks. I've just taken the thunder from the second attachment.
On page 40, appendix 1, I was really proud to see the likelihood score better than bigger. And for starters, I thought we've got dedicated staff.
Is this on your risk assessment?
Yes.
So not our assessment.
So.
Oh, in terms of the risk score on here, I think we have to be realistic. I think fraud's in everything and everywhere, and we do our best, but it is absolutely high risk.
I agree with you, but I would have thought that would the impact score would be high, and maybe the likelihood. I don't know. It just felt slightly the wrong way around. I thought feels great.
I think if you think about fraud and how it touches the council in varying ways, there are lots of small-ish scams which are less impactful than if we had a huge procurement fraud, for example. And that's the difficulty. The instances are lots of, and we only have to look at potentially your council tax support scheme. It's a massive area. There is lots of benefit fraud that exists in the councils. It's not as impactful, but there's lots of it. So I think it's trying to manage that. But I can certainly have a look. I can have a think about it, do some stuff with Victoria.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. So just to follow on from what Emma has mentioned, you'd notice from the 2022 we've updated the fraud risk strategy, which essentially gives a high-level summary of the current risks that are affecting the council and that high-level mitigation. And in addition to that, when we delivered that strategy, we did commit to providing you with an update on the council's compliance with local government fraud checklist, and that's in the report for you, and that just sets out best practice for fraud prevention in local government and how we are compliant with it, which you will see if you had a look. Predominantly, we are green across the board with some partially compliant and a couple of areas that are red, so we're not compliant with. And one of those areas you might see is to do with data analytics. That's purely because we don't have the software to do it. If we did have the software, we would do it, but we don't. But that's not to say we don't use data. You'll know that sort of national exercises with the Cabinet Office, we do the National Fraud Initiative, which has produced some excellent results. You'll notice in the compliance report as well, we make note on a fraud risk register, which we've committed to doing for you, which we're currently working on. So that will look at sort of the risks to all service areas across the council. Initially starting to look at the insider fraud areas and all the fraud risks that are aimed at, that would be applicable to all the council, but also looking at HR, particularly within recruitment, housing, procurement, and revs and bens as well. And that is essentially to aim to give a comprehensive overview of the risks to each service area and what we're doing to mitigate it. And that document will be a live working document, which will be constantly updated as new risks emerge. But that document won't be, of course, published or made public. So that's currently something that we are striving ahead with at the moment. We've also produced a fraud response plan for you. That's just a quick reference guide for all staff members really on what to do and what not to do if they suspect any matters of concern or any alleged fraud. It's got a flow chart in there for them just to help identify who they can report to, what type of things they should be reporting, with the overall aim to sort of protect the integrity of any evidence and the investigation from the outset, so we don't have to play catch up later down the line. So it just gives a quick reference guide to staff members in that respect. We've also looked at some high risk areas during this time. So a couple of areas, the main areas are grant schemes and polygamous working. So to support the newly introduced grant management policy, we've introduced a grants toolkit. So if staff are putting together a new grant scheme, they can use that toolkit to help them inform them on what they should be putting in the application form, how they can verify information, essentially to assist with mitigating any fraud that we might encounter during that particular scheme. We've also looked at polygamous working, so that's staff who have multiple undeclared jobs. It's not saying that people can't have secondary jobs, it's just the ones that they don't tell about us that are a concern, and that might be jobs that people have taken up whilst they've already been an employee, or jobs they have continued whilst they've become onto the council books and they haven't told the council that they intended to keep any former employment going at the same time. So we've taken the opportunity in the report to update you on a recent case that we've had, which came out of the National Fraud Initiative data matching exercise, which identified an individual who was working for numerous councils at the same time, having not declared it, and the outcome of that prosecution case, which led into a wider bit of work for us on producing a management report where we were looking at recommendations across the partnerships that we work for on sort of looking at how we can mitigate the risks of polygamous working in that respect. Yes, and off the back of that, we've made 16 recommendations in total in that report, which we are working with. We'll be working with HR on, where we are with those recommendations and if there's any in there that aren't already implemented, and how we can help do so. So that was a bit of a whiz through the three reports you've got in the pack. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Mark. And I found the flowchart particularly helpful. That was very helpful, thanks. So can we start with the strategy pages report? Any questions on the strategy from members? Yeah.
It's not really a question, it's just an observation, and I think these are really excellent documents. And but I was looking at page 45 with the fraud triangle, which I think is great, and the bubble next to perceived opportunity. And I suppose what it made me reflect on is, I think you guys are doing a great job. I think I've read about some of your work in local media recently, which you referred to a few minutes ago. But I was just thinking, like, we've got these great documents and we've got these things saying, we do this, we do that, which could really just be a paper exercise from somebody just filling in a checklist. And what really matters is what we do, what is happening day to day, how things work in practice. And I think, unfortunately, we've had a couple of items, I guess one we'll be talking about later, where maybe for me, those weak internal controls, ineffective monitoring of controls appears to be present, and it just creates that environment, that opportunity for things to happen. And so I know I haven't really asked a question, but I guess what I'm after is some reassurance that we've got these documents to refer to, but really, we've got a laser focus on what is actually happening, out on the ground.
Thank you, Chair. So I'd say we act on any referral we get. So we've got to rely on the fact that people will refer matters to us, because if I had a crystal ball, I'd have won the lottery some time ago. So I can't foresee particular areas. My big thing, as you know, is prevention. I'd much rather we don't lose money, and I'd much rather we raise awareness for everybody rather than than losing money to fraud. You've also got the issue where we may have an issue where it's perceived as fraud, but to get it to a criminal level, we're just not going to. And internal controls, with the greatest respect, are one of the worst things to undermine a case, because if you got it to court and they said, well, hang on a minute, you weren't doing these checks internally, we've completely undermined ourselves. And it's a fine balance. We want to report transparently to you on the activities and not be criticised if we do that, because then it makes people not want to, publicly. From my perspective, you get a full report, completely transparent, of all the work that we undertake at any of our councils. So I'm never hide anything. Any of the work that we're commissioned to do, we undertake. And that's, anybody, anything, any areas. But I also have to be realistic about the fact that fraud is the most prevalent crime in the UK. It's in absolutely everything we do. And every time a scheme is announced, the winter fuel payments, I don't know if you've now started to receive the text saying, oh, winter, I mean, I'd love to say I'm like this at 80 and I qualify for the winter fuel. I've had a text saying, can you click here because you need to register for your winter fuel. So keeping up with it is really, really difficult. I think the council have got huge areas and we've got to work on awareness, we've got to work on, but we've got to pick our poison. So I focus on areas where I think we can have a big impact and help certain people. So grants was one of them. We started to deliver loads more grants than we ever had before. How do we make sure that we're not paying them incorrectly? We obviously had a case and have had a few cases of secondary employment that's undeclared. How do we work to make sure that we mitigate that risk for you going forward? And this year, it's all about procurement. So the new Act, significant, and I think we do need to look at our controls around procurement, that people are thinking about fraud and contract management and pre-tendering, all of that. So we'll do work there, and you'll get a report on all of those activities. But I would genuinely say any referral that comes into the team, everyone is looked at and triaged. So yeah, and if you've ever got any concerns about areas, obviously you've only got to fire them through. And Lucy and I meet regularly to say, well, have Audit found something we should look at, and vice versa? Is there something that should be done behind an investigation in terms of an audit, so that you get that reassurance and we do it? But yeah, it's a bit massive battle. So yeah, you know, we're beavering away.
Thanks. Any other comments on the strategy, Ben? Okay, right. That's what I'm coming on to next. So that's really good. Ben, over to you. Comment on the checklist.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just with regard to one of the non-compliant areas on there regarding the whistleblowing policy. I can see on there it's to be reviewed 25-26. You might not have complete answer now. I completely understand that. But just wondering what that will look like. Will it be just the contractor or third party signing a bit of paper to say, yeah, we sign up to this policy, or will there be training involved for contractors, third parties regarding the policy and how to follow that?
So I think I need to look at how we engage contractors to make sure we point them in the right direction. And it could be as easy as exactly that. The council has a whistleblowing policy. It's on the policy page on the website. You will be protected under whistleblowing law if you want to refer a matter through to the council, and it's signposting them. And I think it's a bigger thing around when we take on contractors, how they work for the council and what things are they privy to, how do they have access to the right policies, and whistleblowing was one of them. I think they probably do get the comms, because every April we do a annual reminder to staff, we signpost them to the policy, we signpost them to that flowchart that we put together that came here, I think earlier this year or last year. And contractors, if they're on the email, are clearly going to get wrapped up in that. So I think it's a bit of work, but what I didn't want to do is say we're completely compliant, and actually we need to look at making sure that contractors are engaged in exactly the same way about the rules and regulations and whistleblowing. What I should have said is also with the checklist, rather than coming back to you with the whole thing next year, what we'll do is come back to you with any changes. So the ones that are not partially or non-compliant, we'll give you an update on. And clearly, if any went from compliant to partially, we'd also update. But rather than bringing the whole thing, there will be an update to continue that assurance that we're ticking the boxes.
So like a summary of anything that becomes only partially or incomplete, or that is shifting from partially complete onwards. Just as in terms of process, how does this feed into the management team to know they've got to act in some way?
So I am a member of the governance group here, and that's with all three statutory officers. So Gareth, Claire and Paul are also members, Lucy and I. So we have meetings quarterly, so any of the documents. So this, for example, went through governance committee before it came here. And if I have anything particular, so the management report, for example, that we talked about related to the polygamous working with all the recommendations in, that has been presented to corporate management teams across the 6 councils. And again, then there's a commitment to how we're working with HR, what we're going to do as an organisation. So they're fully aware of all the stuff we're up to.
So just really to conclude, is there anything you think we should take particular note of as a committee in terms of the areas that are partially or non-compliant, or the fact that we've looked through this now and aware of them? Are you happy that that's where we leave it for the time being?
I think from audit committee members, they are completely compliant because, of course, I directly report into those committees. I think the partially compliant was more, as I say, about the more generally how we're reporting into councillors as a whole. So I'll sort that, and then again make sure that, you know, there's more conversation about thinking about fraud risk generally in activities.
Thanks, Emma. Anything else from members, or can I invite you to approve the recommendations by a show of hands, please? Sorry, Duncan.
As you know, I raised, there've been a number of things in the press recently, haven't there, about the gentleman who's referenced in here, a procurement issue that was another relatively local council, and I think it was Weymouth had a situation where a number of officers had been dismissed and all that. And I raised the point with the chairman separately in an email saying, you know, was there a process where when these things happened, they fed into something and we then did a check to say, yep, we've got that, we've listened to that, and we've taken it away. I'm absolutely certain from what you're saying that is absolutely there. I just wondered whether it needed a line in your strategy. I didn't see it. Perhaps it's already in there to say we also respond. We also have an active network with, you know, through various forums. And as soon as something there's an immediate evaluation of that event that's happened. We would expect our controls to manage it, but we will always routinely check it. I'm sure you do. I just didn't see it in the paperwork. Maybe it was. Sorry, I apologise if it is, because it's quite a lot of paper.
To be honest, it's a lot better time than you have. I'm positive it is. Because I cover off the fact that we report into governance groups, internal audit, and as necessary with corporate management. And because I work to the chief finance officer at each council, they oversee the work plan and I have one-to-ones with them. So I'm sure it's somewhere in terms of our governance activities, and it could be in the overarching partnership agreement. But yes, that approach is within it. And we also commit to a management report where we identify any significant issues that come out of internal cases.
Absolutely, yeah. No doubt.
And I'm a pedant, so I do go back and say, have you done what I asked? So yeah, I do always do a double check.
Okay, great. Can I then ask for a show of hands to accept the report, please? Thank you.
The counter-fraud team has access to the FFCL regional network, possibly,
Yeah.
enabling collaboration and knowledge sharing with other counter-fraud professionals. You were right. It's in.
Thanks, Chris. Right, so it's slightly unusual circumstance here. We're moving on to the review of the corporate risk register. It is an item for information only, but unfortunately we haven't got anybody who we can really address any questions to. However, if we have got any questions, I am assured that we will get answers to them if we can leave them with Judith and myself to take to the relevant officer. For me, just to start us off, I looked through the closed risks. I was quite happy that they were closed. Are there any that members have concern about being closed?
I don't know if we're talking about the same thing. I had a query about general balances being taken off. Just because, maybe it's just because I'm so focused on the level of general balances. I think they're pretty critical. So all I was going to do is just ask for the rationale, because I'm sure it is an absolute focus for the Section 151 officer. You know, I have no doubt that that number gets a lot of focus. Yeah. So my question, it was more, I suppose, more of a process question, because I'm not doubting it's not an area of focus.
Four new risks. Two are itemised here, two are not available for us because of their confidential nature. I was wondering why we couldn't take those under exemption. All right. So if that could be a question for either Claire or Victoria, depending on, yeah. So we can make a note of that one as well. So there's two questions for them. Yep. Chris?
Yeah, that was on my list, because the point I'd want conveyed is this committee approves the accounts, and therefore I think we do need to be given all the information to be able to do that.
Talking here about the top council risks. Is there anybody want to comment on any of those and raise any issues about them, particularly the highest scoring ones? I don't know whether I got this wrong, but it seemed to me that according to the matrix, there were 3 in this top category with a score of 20. There's only 2 listed here. And there were 12 per the matrix with a score of 16, but only 11 listed here. There may be a very good reason for that, but again, probably have to. So that's a question for Victoria or Claire. Other than that sort of rather accounting type, reconciliation type risk, I did also think that the risk ID 159, I can see it's a very high risk, but I wondered if there's really anything we can do. I mean, see, you know, we are now a housing authority. This is more a question from, well, it's unreasonable to ask Matt specifically, but you know, having a risk suggests that you might be able to act in some way. Anyway, that's again probably a question for Victoria or Claire. Just to see it right at the top here. If there's not a lot we can do, I'm not sure whether that's right. Go on, Chris.
I think, thinking back to budget scrutiny meetings, if we're looking at it from a financial point of view, because they have their own kind of general reserve, then there are things that can be done in terms of timing of repairs and renewals. If you're looking at it from a purely financial perspective, you know, you can control expenditure within a period if you need to. You can, you know, turn the taps on or off a bit. But purely
sure, I mean, there's ways to control the HRA balance, but it struck me that if it becomes unviable, I probably wanted it may be about wording there that it doesn't quite make sense, does it? The way it's worded, to me anyway. And I think 142 links very closely to 5.2. Because it's both the trust, they're both items about the trust, aren't they? But again, maybe that's a question for Richard. Well, it's Richard's name against it, so maybe we could ask Richard that question, Judith. Okay, Ashley.
Isn't one about whether they've got a long-term vision and the other one about whether the organisation is capable of delivering it?
Just actually, at the last overview and scrutiny meeting, preventative maintenance was on the agenda. And if I understood the situation correctly, the trust operate, the buildings we own on a day-to-day basis with income and expenditure. But if particularly a substantial repair needs to happen, that isn't the trust. That's us as landlords. We have to step in and do that out of, if you like, out of our accounts rather than theirs. So to me, from that overview and scrutiny item, it does make sense that they're split.
Ashley.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to flag that I think 197 and 158 also fall under these are very similar risks in that 197 is about people resource and local government reorganisation and making financial preparations for that. Mm-hmm. And then 158 is local government reorganisation and making sure we have the money to do that. So I feel like they could maybe be, why are they itemised twice?
One's down to Anne and one's down to Gareth.
Yeah, oh, why? And one of them was due last year and one of them was due last month.
Yes, okay. I think it's a good question. That's when we can, I suspect people just haven't looked at it. Right. Anything else on this for information item? In which case, I can tell you that there are no other items that I'm deeming of an urgent nature requiring a decision. And that our next meeting is on the 28th of January. Is that right? Not until cracking the new year. Wow. Okay, so I declare the main bit? No, that's not the right word. The non-exempt bit of the meeting closed. And I think I probably have to read something out now. If anybody wants to depart before we get to the exempt session, do feel free. But if you're all happy to stay, I will read this. Okay. Right. The committee is recommended to approve the following resolution, that in accordance with section 100A brackets 4 close brackets Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting. There you go. For the remaining agenda items. As it is likely, in view of the nature of the business being transacted or the nature of the proceedings, if members of the public are present, they will be disclosed. There will be disclosed to them exempt information as defined in paragraph 3, part 1, schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, namely paragraph 3, information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding the information. Right.